Yes, could you just let the public know that the line item detailed copy of the budget is available if they, online as well, if they would like public inspection, and I think there's a copy on the desk as well.
It's an opportunity for the public to present questions to the board. If you have a question, there's the mic in front. If you just push the lever down so that we can pick it up on whereas we're broadcasting. We are, I hope.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're specific to the question.
Right. Yeah. And the question should be specific to the articles that we're bringing forward. So, questions? Please, yes. And there's a little lever in the very front of the mic. And
Okay.
your name and where you're from, please?
Yes. Sarah Kahn. I live in Dublin. I have a question about as the school populations change, students from middle schools may be reassigned to elementary school locations. Can somebody give maybe some more detail about how that's going to work, how those decisions will be made, what kind of a notice there will be if that happens?
So that is actually the existing language in the article now. That is not new. So that
So
would
the only thing that's new then is just what's stricken?
yes.
Okay. So then I guess my question is more specific to that. What exactly does the plan for this look like? Like when would we expect this to roll out? How would transportation changes work? Because to consolidate that down to that few schools would require a lot of extra busing.
Okay. So the board, I believe the board's plan, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is to have, should this pass, have, am I answering this, is going to be to direct the administration to spend the first year planning and coming up with this is how it will look, this is what it looks like, here's how this should be implemented. Am I answering that correctly? Sorry. Okay,
So
thank
this, just to understand, this proposal is sort of without the fiscal impact and what the final plan is going to look like. You're going to vote on it before we know that. And if I'm wrong, please help me understand.
So this is not a plan.
Okay.
This is the first step we need in order to take any further steps. In other words, if you want to, we put forth a proposal. It's in that report, the 400-page report, the outlines of it. There aren't a lot of specifics attached. Well, there's some specifics in there, but in order for us to take a step in that direction and start the actual planning to tell people what it would look like, we need to pass this article. We need to make this change in the article of agreement. We can't do anything without that.
So there's no way to make a plan or know what the impact will be until it's been voted that these schools will be closed?
You're not voting for the
I know.
schools to be closed.
Uh-huh.
What you're saying is you're giving us permission to do that. And then we can start the planning.
Okay, so as legally stated, just to make sure we're really clear, this is a change in the article of agreement from elementary schools shall be maintained in Antrim, Bennington, Dublin, Francistown, Greenfield, Hancock, and Peterborough, and Temple, to elementary schools shall be maintained in Antrim, Greenfield, Hancock, and Peterborough. It doesn't decide, it doesn't say that the schools will close. It doesn't give, what it does is it gives the power to, or the opportunity to the board to make a decision on whether those schools in those towns would remain open. But it doesn't actually say these schools will close. That would come so basically, again, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is the first time is basically the board would be saying to the administration, spend the first year, come back, tell us what it looks like if X, and tell us what is the plan based on these new articles of agreement.
So would there be further hearings then, further public hearings like this throughout that process?
So there would be no legal obligation to have a public hearing. This is a public hearing like this is legally, the board is legally bound to have this hearing, actually by the articles of agreement, as they stand now. So clearly the board would, and I'm really way out of my realm here, the board would be, particularly once that planning stage was done, would be looking for input and thoughts.
Janine?
Of course we would.
Okay.
Catherine?
And let me further say that anything that we do or is presented to us throughout the course of that planning period will be done at public meetings and noticed on the public agenda where you can make public comment. So
Okay.
and there will be meetings, there will be all sorts of things that are occurring. And to just go back in time, you had asked about busing specifically. We had already directed the superintendent to look at before we even proposed the Articles of Agreement, to look at a single start time and combining K-12 busing, or what a single start time would look like. So some of that is going to be rolled into this process. It's a very large undertaking for the administration to look at how we might implement the permission that you're giving. I can't speak for the entire board, and I can't speak for a future board, but I don't think the intent will be depending on what the plan looks like, it could be any version of 1 school, 2, 3, 4, nothing. It really will depend on the implementation plan that comes forward before this board and before the public to discuss. So there's a lot of steps that need to happen, but we can't ask for their time to be spent. This is a huge undertaking. If the voters don't want us to even consider it.
So if this is voted on today, there's no imminent expectation of change. Okay. What would be a reasonable timeline then to expect some kind of change? It sounds like if this is approved, it does give you guys not just the authority to plan, but to potentially make this change. You're saying you will have further meetings, but you're saying you don't have to? I just want to understand.
Go.
We are going to have further meetings as we've had before. And we've had community forums, and we've had surveys done. We've had open meetings on this a lot, and we will continue to have meetings on this. Whether it's legally required or not does not matter. That's what we were committed to do in the beginning, and we'll continue to do that. And we plan on spending an entire year, not any shorter than that, but it has to be done in an entire year to go through the planning process.
So it is possible if the planning process goes through, this change goes through, that it could start for the 25-26 school year?
Yes, that could be a possibility, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So that is a reasonable possible expectation.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
I don't think that I personally have any further questions.
okay. I don't know who I saw first, so I'll start from my right and I'll go to my left. Yes.
Just following on that comment, it would seem.
Name and town,
Oh,
please.
Susan Peters, live in Dublin. Following on that comment, it would seem that the fair and most flexible proposal would be to take away the guarantee for all the towns. And I know it was mentioned before that in a lot of communities around the country, it's a school board that would have this authority. Anyhow, I'm not advocating that we take it away for all the towns, but why just the 4 towns? If what you're really asking for is flexibility in planning and the most sort of free reign you can to come up with the best plan. So if it was all the towns this guarantee was removed for, in some ways that might feel more fair. Thank you.
Right. We're starting from my right and I'll come to my left. Joe, yes.
Joe McGregor from Bennington. It seems to me that if the voters approve this change, that you would be obligated to then go along with what this then says. And the 4 schools that you're eliminating no longer exist, then you no longer have the obligation or the opportunity to have a discussion at a later date as to whether or not to close those schools. and I hope I'm wrong, but I think that if this gets voted yes, then the only places that you could put elementary schools would be in the remaining schools, because you have, by changing this, eliminated those buildings.
Superintendent?
So, as far as the legalese part of it, so it says shall be maintained. It means that the board does not have would never have a choice about maintaining elementary schools in those in those 4 towns. It does not, and I just want to be clear. I don't know. I'm speaking as the superintendent whose job it is to explain the articles. I can't speak to the board's intent, but what I can tell you is that it doesn't say that you can't have a school in Temple, Dublin, in those places, just like it doesn't say tomorrow the board could ask the voters to build a school in Sharon. I don't know why we'd do that, but that it doesn't preclude those schools from existing. What it does say is that you must have schools in those 4 communities.
But-
Just like it doesn't say that we have to have both middle schools. The board has continued to support, as have the communities, having the 2 middle schools.
But it does not say that you shall or may have schools in Antrim or Greenfield, or the schools that you're eliminating. I'm getting hung up on the language, because if this is a yes vote, I think you're in the same position that you're in now. I'm seeing a head shake no.
I'm looking, I'm
Because where it says
pulling something up.
grades 5 through 8 may be moved, right? Elementary schools shall be maintained in Antrim, Greenfield, Hancock, Peterborough. There's no discussion about the possibility of having schools, if you choose later to have schools in Bennington and Dublin and Temple. It seems to me that we're not accomplishing what it is that you're trying to accomplish, which is to have the flexibility to move students around and provide the opportunity for towns to remove. And I know that we've got a 2-minute and I'm trying to be, but I really am.
We didn't send it to limit, Joe.
Okay. But am I really wrong in that if the towns, and I hope they don't, but if the voters vote to approve this, it just seems to me that you are stuck, because the only place that this amended article of agreement allows you to place students are in those 4 buildings.
Tim?
Sure.
You mentioned opportunity and obligation. We have an obligation to maintain schools in Peterborough, Greenfield, Antrim, and what's the other one? Hancock. We have an opportunity to maintain schools in the other 4. That's
It
what
doesn't say that.
That is what our lawyer says, that is what it means.
Then,
That is what it means.
but it's,
I'll write to Dean, right?
Head Superintendent.
So I understand what you are saying, Joe. That is not the way that we have been advised, nor is it the way that we understand it. But as we speak, I'm double checking with counsel, and he's really fast, so.
but I guess then the big question is, how do you as a school board, and having experienced it, educate the general public that this is not a must, but a shall or can or an opportunity? Because to me, it seems it's just black and white. The other question that I had is, has the board taken a position on whether, when this goes on the warrant, that you will support it or not?
We did. It was 11 members supporting, 2 not supporting.
11 members to not support.
No, 11 support, 2 members did not.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're welcome, Joe. Thank you.
Brenda.
Anything else, Joe?
I will,
Neighbor is here, were they?
I had some questions about buildings, but that doesn't pertain to the to this
The
amendment.
article, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and I was coming to the left. Is there anyone to my left? Okay,
I don't think. we're-
yeah, Tina had her hand up, that's what
They
I'm
weren't
speaking to.
We're not all here. Hey, Dick.
Hi, I'm Tina Kriebel from Peterborough. I just want to ask a clarifying question. My understanding is that the year of planning is, the reason that that is coming after this vote is because of the enormous staff and administration costs it will take to actually execute all the components of this plan. And since we've all recognized that our district is short-staffed and trying to hire, that's part of the reason why the vote is coming before the planning?
So, just just a broad stroke, there won't be anything else on the table in order to plan for a school closure, and or plan like this is what the district is going to be, how the district is going to be configured. The administration will be pushing everything else off their plate. So no strategic measures, none of those pieces will continue. We will solely be working on what that plan looks like in order to make sure that we're able to collaborate both with the board and the community as we move through each step of planning. So it is an immense task.
Thank you.
John and then,
John Wood, Dublin. I've asked this before and I haven't given them very much time to gather it, but I'm going to go ahead and ask again publicly so that everybody online that's watching this can also potentially get a copy. The articles of agreement that are on the Conval website only include pages 17 through 20 of the articles of agreement. You just recently referenced another part of the articles agreement that is, I don't believe, is part of the Conval website articles of agreement. So there's 5 pages, I think, but it says excerpts through 17 through 20. So do you have the full original articles of agreement? And I'll stop.
So we have the original. So first of all, that 17 to 19 is referencing parts of a report that is, I believe, the original 1967 report. Those are the articles of agreement as signed and adopted by the Kentucky Valley School District, and then over a number of years amended. But those are the articles of agreement. There are no additional articles of agreement hanging out there someplace. What those are is the articles of agreement were parts of a report, of the pages of a report.
Is the report available?
Absolutely.
Do you have a copy of that?
I do.
May I have a copy of that?
Sure, you just need to leave me your email.
Thank you, ma'am.
all right,
Dick, can I make a correction?
sure.
For the record, the vote was not 11-2. There were 2 abstaining, or 2 votes nay, but there were only 10 board members present, not 13 at that vote on January 2nd. So Dick was
That's
correcting
right.
the 2, but there's only, there were,
Someone was not here.
minutes of the meeting say there were 10 people
Okay.
here. So it's 8-2. 3 not present.
Just someone right behind you. That's okay. The little green.
He's got me going now. Joe and I have had occasion over the years to agree or disagree as to what words mean in contracts. And I have to tell you that this time he and I are on the same page. I absolutely agree with what he said. The way that this article is written, if it passes that way, you will have no choice to have schools in those 4 towns, the way it's written. The towns of Bennington and Temple, Francistown, and Dublin. So I would hope that you would take a good look at that and think about that. I also have to just say as a quick comment that some of the towns like Bennington, the most vital building in the whole town is the school. And when you close that down, it's going to change a lot of things. And I'm sure that's true of the other towns as well. There's a lot of questions as to what happens to all of those buildings and so forth as this goes down the road. So anyway, I just wanted to put my vote in that I think the way it's written is pretty tight. And I've seen a lot of contract language. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Certainly, yep. John, yep.
Blake Minkler from Dublin. My question is if the amendment for the changed articles of agreement passes the town vote by 2/3 and you begin your year-long process of planning the closure of whatever schools that you plan on doing, have you considered the possibility that a town propose a withdrawal from the district? And do you believe you might have the possible capacity to conduct a feasibility study concurrently as a year of planning to close schools?
So that would be an immense task, certainly, but we would be, so in order, the way that a withdrawal works is a town would vote, unless they're going to vote this year on that, we would be planning during the year prior to them putting that on the vote. So we would have the planning done. And then, so I'm just going to say if Sharon, sorry, I keep picking on Sharon tonight, don't I? If Sharon was going to propose to withdraw from the district, they would be putting that either on this 2024, right, 2024, or they would be putting it on 2025. If this passes in 2024 at the school level, no, the only town that could potentially put a withdrawal petition would be Peterborough, because their towns vote in May. So we would be doing the planning for the planning for potentially reconfiguring the district, and then we would be doing the feasibility study in conjunction with the town. And just to be clear, that while there's a lot of, and I'm not going to say it's not a huge effort on the part of the co-op, that is having to participate in that is also falls in part to the town. So.
Other members with questions? Certainly.
Evening. I'm Chris Gallant from Dublin. I would first like to agree with everybody here that the language, I agree that just all of the towns should be removed. But my primary concern and question is that this is relating to 8 separate towns, and this seems like a lack of representation of all of those towns. It says here you've got a snow date for the 16th. How much snow is required to, get that going? Because should there be any future meetings, like how do we figure out when we are going to be using these snow dates? Because I imagine that there's a lot of people not here right now due to the snow.
I don't call the meeting, the board chair does, so.
Right. There is the deliberative session that comes up, and that's another place for the public to come forward. So there's another opportunity to.
So that will also be going on the 16th?
No. That's when when is the date for? February 6th. Yeah, that's the deliberative session, which is at the high school. In
Gotcha.
the gymnasium. You may be familiar with that one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other members? I'm not seeing anything. Board members, questions? Superintendent?
So I have both texted and emailed the council to follow up on your question, or several of you questioning with questions about the language. If there is any significant or substantive change to how we just presented that, we will make sure that is made public.
All right, not seeing any other questions. I will.
could Kimberly or Dick address the public what is allowed at the deliberative session regarding to this warrant article? The public can vote to make an amendment to the warrant article. Somebody can propose it, a change to the warrant article, and if it's accepted at the deliberative session, that change would be what gets voted on in March.
Right, deliberative session, anything that's on the warrant can be adjusted from the floor to some degree.
So
To
it's-
some degree,
it's
not every piece.
It's not that cut and dry.
Answer.
Yeah.
Not me.
So you can change you can change a warrant article. You cannot negate the intent of the warrant article. So in that's why our legal counsel attends the session to help us go through whether or not. So you could change, for instance, you could change and say we're going to close Peterborough instead of Dublin, or you can make changes to the warrant articles, but you cannot negate the intent of the warrant article. So for instance, with the budget warrant article, you can't, well, one, you can't zero the budget out, thank God. And two, you can't say, shall the Kentucky Valley not vote to raise and appropriate. And so you can't, it's not quite, it's just not that cut and dry. So I want to make that clear. And it does take, go ahead.
So
it's essentially-
in my humble and not so learned position, the proposal that you talked about eliminating all the schools, listing all of them that shall, that would be something that would allow us to, I would think, would allow us to do what we intended to do. I think. We'd have to get legal counsel, but and counsel will be there to answer that question.
Catherine?
So the deliberative session is like your annual town meeting. It would have the same abilities for the legislative body, the voters, to come forward and discuss anything that's before the business. So whatever the warrant is, the budget, and anything that comes before the voters. And you have to meet the stay-at-home test, which is not have change of purpose. So if anyone did not come to the deliberative session, that it wasn't changed so much, same with town meeting, that the purpose is no longer valid. So I do think that any amendment around a already legal document would probably have to be vetted, and we have town council there. Otherwise, it won't be legally binding. So there are times where the New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration has to what's called disallow a amendment made because it does not meet the standards for either change of purpose or the monetary doesn't meet up or it's a completely illegal action. So there is some caution to that, but it is the voters' meeting and it is the voters' budget. So there's also flexibility for the voters. It just has to be done in a procedural way that follows RSA Chapter 32, Municipal Budget Law, the Municipal Budget Act.
Janine?
Also, once you make a proposal, a proposed change, the assembly votes on.
Any other questions for board members?
Pardon me if this is ignorant. The deliberative session, is it separate for every town or there's one deliberative session? When
One.
is it? It is the
February
meeting.
6th.
February 6th. And where is it? Great. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for board members? Jim, question?
That deliberative session, what we do is Bob will be moderating, I think, right? Your term has expired. Bob Edwards moderates it. He's the moderator for the school district. Then we go through each of the amendments, each of the warrant articles, one by one by one. We start with the budget. We explain the budget. We have a presentation of the budget. The public has an opportunity to comment on the budget, make amendments to the budget, and then if there's no votes or changes, we move on to the next one. So we talk about every single warrant article on the ballot. Any one of them can be, not any one of them could be changed, some can't be changed, but there is an opportunity to change some of them. That's where it happens. If you want to change the wording of a warrant article, do it there.
Any other questions for board members?
Is it possible to submit an amendment prior to the deliberative
I
session
don't believe so.
to determine whether or not it's legal?
You have to, And I need to.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. If you want to come up to the mic, that will help. So the question was if you could submit the amendment prior. You can come a little early and say, I intend to submit this and our council will be there. But you can't submit it like next week and say, I want to submit this amendment, because it's not just like you have to amend it, and there's just some very clear steps that are the same as your town meeting.
My concern would be that someone may present an amendment, find out that there's some legal terminology in it. Then they have to rewrite that amendment.
Yep.
Submit it a second time.
Yep.
I'm thinking about the amount of time that would be involved. And would someone be denied that opportunity because of time to not be able to rewrite and resubmit? No.
No.
Okay.
And actually, I can't even say no. That the moderator sets those rules. And I don't know if you've ever met Bob Edwards, but that's kind of out of his character.
I do know Bob.
Am I going out on a limb here, Mr. Moderator?
John? Thank you, John.
I'm still John Manley. And might I ask, when the school board speaks for the first time, would they introduce themselves? Some of us don't know you all, unfortunately. I am one. Anyway, does it exist now, or is this going to happen later, that we will see a comparison of the savings for the school and the increases in the busing costs, so that we can judge fairly whether or not this is a good deal?
Yes. The answer to that, John, is yes.
Yes, what? It exists already, or we're going to see it?
I think maybe, John, people are confused by your question. We don't have specific transportation information at this time.
Okay.
If you look at the report, what it does is it went through all of those different pieces, and it's estimating a savings of $2.5 to $4 million in the report.
And that is inclusive of transportation?
That would be inclusive of in either increases in transportation or decreases in transportation, increases in staffing costs or decreases in staffing costs, et cetera.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other board members with questions? Okay. then seeing no more questions for board members, and I need the board to vote to close the public hearing. So I have a motion.
So move.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right. Meeting's closed. Thank you for being here.
I was ready. I know it's not the time. No, that's since it was brought up.
But just so, yes, I want to get the intent of the article, so we don't need to disagree and spend time on that. I want to know what goes outside the intent.
I'd like to see it. The answer you.
Well, no, I meant,
But you understand what my
so he's not judging the amendment, he's talking about.